So, what do you do when politics hits a wall? When official channels just aren't working? Can things like culture and faith actually build bridges that diplomacy can't? Well, today, we're diving into the incredible story of Master Hsing Yun. He was a Buddhist monk whose entire life's work was about building peace across the Taiwan Strait, but he did it using a shared heritage, not politics. Let's get into how he pulled it off.
And you've got to understand, this wasn't just some nice-sounding platitude. This single, powerful hope was pretty much the engine behind decades of his work. For Master Hsing Yun, this was everything. It was the personal promise that drove every single thing we're about to talk about.
So how exactly did he turn that hope into an actual plan? We're going to walk through his blueprint for peace, piece by piece. First up, we'll look at why this was so deeply personal for him. Then, we'll dig into his big idea, using Buddhism as the perfect bridge. And after that, we'll break down his 3 key strategies: culture, music, and finally, rebuilding a shared heritage.
Okay, so to really get the how, we have to start with the why. Master Hsing Yun's absolute dedication to peace wasn't just some abstract idea he came up with. Nope, it was forged in the fire of his own life experience.
He really, truly lived this. He grew up surrounded by the chaos of warlords, bandits, the Sino-Japanese War, and the Chinese Civil War. For him, this wasn't a history lesson. It was just reality. And that painful, profound understanding of just how brutal conflict is became the unshakable foundation for his entire life's mission.
So, with that motivation burning inside him, he started looking for a path forward. He had this core belief that where politics and economics might get stuck, a shared spiritual and cultural heritage could open up this totally unique and powerful way for people to connect.
You can just feel the conviction in that statement, right? Master Hsing Yun saw Buddhism as way more than a religion. To him, it was like a shared cultural language that could just rise above all the political arguments. He believed its basic ideas could create a whole new kind of conversation, one built on understanding each other, not just haggling over terms.
And he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. Every single project he launched was built on these 3 core principles. First, Ronghe Zunchong, which is about integration and respect, not forcing one side to be like the other. Then you have Baorong, inclusivity and tolerance, being open to differences. And finally, Pingdung, equality, making sure everyone came to the table as equals. These weren't just nice ideas, this was his actual game plan.
And you can really see this strategy in action when you look at the timeline. I mean, check out the progression. In 1988, he creates the very first chance for Buddhist leaders from both sides to even be in the same room. Just 1 year later, in 1989, he's leading this huge 500-person group back to the mainland. And by 2006, he helps create the World Buddhist Forum, basically making this channel for dialogue permanent. Every move was a deliberate step to build trust.
All right, let's get into his first big strategy, using these massive cultural projects to give both sides a real, tangible goal to work on together. He knew that if you can get people to build something historic together, you create bonds that just talking could never achieve.
So what's with the number 132? Well, that's how many volumes are in the Chinese Buddhist canon. This was a gigantic academic project that Master Hsing Yun checked off. His goal was to take these ancient, super complex Buddhist texts and make them easy for anyone to read today. But how he did it? That was the real genius.
This is the key right here. The workflow itself was the bridge. He had scholars from the mainland write the text, and then scholars from Taiwan would edit and finalize it. This wasn't just some symbolic thing, it was a real hands-on intellectual partnership that forced them to communicate and respect each other's work.
And here's where you see the real human impact. For a lot of the young mainland scholars working on this, it wasn't just an academic exercise. It was the first time they ever got to work directly with their peers from Taiwan. It took this abstract idea of the other side and made it personal. It literally made Taiwan feel closer.
And he carried that same spirit into his next big project, which was all about collecting modern Buddhist scholarly works. When someone asked him what the guiding mission was, his answer was so simple and so powerful. It was never about one side winning or getting more out of it. It was always about creating something together, for everyone, for the future.
All right, so we've talked about the power of the written word. But now let's shift to something that can connect people without any words at all: music. Master Hsing Yun totally got that. Sound and melody can stir up emotions and create a sense of unity that just bypasses all the politics and intellectual stuff.
This was a huge moment and incredibly symbolic. See, 50 years before this, Master Hsing Yun had brought these traditional Buddhist chants from the mainland over to Taiwan.
and now he was bringing them back home to where they started. It was this beautiful cultural homecoming that closed a 50-year loop and opened a brand new door.
But he didn't stop there. Of course he didn't. Building on that success, he took it to the next level. The very next year, they didn't just perform in the mainland, they performed with the mainland. They put together a joint orchestra, mixing singers from his group with mainland musicians, and they showcased all these different traditions of Chinese Buddhism. And then they took that message of unity all over the world.
A journalist at the time just absolutely nailed it with this comment. The official 3 links, mail, transport, and trade, were still tied up in negotiations. But on a cultural and spiritual level, the connection was already there. The arts had literally lapped politics.
And that brings us to his final and maybe the most personal part of his strategy. After building these bridges with books and music, he turned to rebuilding a physical one, a powerful symbol of a shared past and, more importantly, a commitment to a shared future.
Can you imagine when Master Hsing Yun finally went back to his ancestral temple in 1989, after being away for 40 years, this is what he found. Absolutely nothing, not a single tile left. The place where his own spiritual journey began was just gone, wiped away by history.
So when the chance to rebuild it finally came up, he said yes, but with some really important conditions. He was adamant that it had to be a real place of faith, not a tourist trap. So rule number 1, no entrance fees. Rule number 2, he would appoint the abbot to keep the religious tradition pure. Basically, his conditions were a diplomatic move in themselves, saying this is about faith and community, not about profit or control. And how did the local government react to his principled stance? Well, they didn't just agree, they went all in. They granted over 2,000 acres of land for the new temple. It was just this massive vote of confidence, showing that his vision for what the temple should be really struck a chord.
And look at the result. The temple today isn't some dusty monument. It's a vibrant, living hub for exchange. It hosts this huge annual vegetarian expo that brings in hundreds of thousands of people. It's building goodwill and creating new relationships through something as simple and universal as sharing food.
And this quote, it just perfectly captures the entire spirit of his life's work. To him, every successful project, whether it was a book, a concert, or this temple, it was all proof of a bigger idea. It was proof that working together wasn't just possible, but that it could build real momentum towards friendship and peace.
Master Hsing Yun's story really shows that you can build bridges out of the most surprising things: ancient books, old songs, and shared family roots. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? If one person could do all that just by focusing on what we all share as humans, what common ground are we overlooking in our own world right now to connect with other people?